Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to be having a tech talk on the topic of secure browsing, the new front line of enterprise security. I'm going to be joined here today by two experts. We have with us today Todd Hsu, President of Farouk Systems, and Jonathan Lieberman, CEO and co-founder of ACM. Welcome today, and I will pass over to Todd.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very excited that me and Jonathan, we get to actually do this today. It's a very popular discussion point and topics that among us in the enterprise IT space. Today we're gonna talk about why the legacy security model that falls short, and how the browser is usually the most vulnerable, and why is it a risk, and what is secure browsing, and we're gonna talk, and Jonathan's gonna talk about the research findings and the strategies to protect the users, and why ACM is a very innovative solution to protect them without slowing them down. So just to give everybody a little bit of background about Farouk Systems, we call ourselves the master of end user infrastructure. We have almost 30 years of experiences when it comes to end user computing, from the days when we try to deliver remote applications or desktops, to fast forward to today of delivering the entire digital workspaces with the ability to secure and make the remote and hybrid workspaces more efficient, and also provide the proper management and proper security posture to these spaces. We like to call ourselves, we like to believe that we are one of the leading consulting and value-added providers in these spaces, and also a managed services provider that actually manages some of the more I guess some of the more larger and more critical environments in the world, evolving around the end user computing space. So to actually borrow a quote and from our friend Mr. Mark Templeton, who former CEO of Citrix Systems, and also he's also our independent board advisor for both my business as well as Jonathan's business. The secure browser is rapidly becoming a digital workspace, a central place for accessing apps, data, workflow, and AI assistance. We're in a fast track to an OS agnostic world where the browser is the computer. We talked about this for decades, and if you actually old enough to remember, I believe it was Sun Microsystems back in the 90s. They call it a slogan of network. Your network is your computer, and today I think we live in that world. A lot of our compute, a lot of our data, a lot of everything that we do, all lives in the network, and all lives everywhere around the world through the network. And the browser is the browser is the primary interface for us to actually access all of that information and make use and make productivity out of it. So, and as we transition into that world from from using a Windows desktop to a primary browser based um, environment, we are vulnerable to many things. And actually, one of the things that happened a couple of nights ago from a friend of mine was um, a very large um, franchise store, which you probably already seen on the streets. If I can't tell you what the name is, but you see it on the street. They were hacked through again through a vulnerability in the browsers, and because the users were accessing things that they're not supposed to, and then in return that their main file storage and file server was then kryptonized, and now they're subject for a ransomware. So this happens every day, and having having a good strategy to actually secure your browser, which is your primary access, the method for accessing your information, is more important, more prominent than ever, right? So, so without further ado, I'd like to actually introduce my friend Jonathan. He can talk to you about why we partner with Axiom, not because that he's a nice guy, but he has a very innovative way of helping people securing their primary working tool, which is the browser.
Thank you, Todd, and great to be with you all today. Hsu Lieberman, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Axiom. And let's put some numbers behind Mark Templeton's observation. Consider these statistics. 75% of enterprise work happens in browsers. 90% of network traffic is consumed by browsers. And despite this shift in the way that we work, our legacy security approaches have not kept pace. And look at these concerning figures. 70% of observed malware cases last year were browser-based, and over 80% of CISOs say that data loss stemming from insider incidents is a real challenge. And this is a disconnect between where work happens and where security focuses. And this is exactly what we're addressing today at Axiom and at Farouk. And the bottom line is that secure browsing is no longer optional. It's imperative that all organizations of all sizes that want to protect its data and operations. And 94% of employees spend half of their workday in a browser, but most browsers remain unprotected. And just think about that disconnect. Your most used application, where nearly all of your sensitive data passes through, lacks the appropriate levels of security. And this creates an enormous attack surface that traditional security tools were not designed to protect. And so, why are traditional security models failing? Because they were built for fundamentally different environments. And you have, first of all, legacy security was built for static environments, but today's world's dynamic. Perimeter-based security cannot protect users that are working from anywhere on any device in this world of hybrid work, remote work. I mean, there's been a big back to office push, but the reality is that there's so many companies, so many of us are working remotely and or with distributed workforces. And most of the tools that were developed don't really address this use case. And then, of course, the proliferation of SaaS applications, unmanaged browsers, and shadow IT. This creates gaps, that the attackers are actively exploiting. And so your browser has become your most used app, your super app, and it's also the most vulnerable. And the reality is that this requires a completely new approach to security. And so let's look more closely at why browsers present such an effective target, for cyber criminals. They represent direct access to your organization's sensitive data and your SaaS applications, right? So it used to be that we worked on a desktop, through a Microsoft operating system, but the reality is that 80% of the time we're all working in a SaaS app, a cloud-based app, and we're accessing them through browsers. So now you're giving, the attackers direct access to the really important resources. And browsers now represent direct access to, your organization's most important attack surfaces. And what we're seeing is that you have malicious extensions, credential theft, and session hijacking, shadow SaaS usage, and then data exfiltration via copy and paste uploads and screenshots. And these are all the vulnerable areas that attackers are coming through. And the legacy controls like secure access gateways, VPNs, CASBs, SASEs, the reality is that they don't address this layer. They don't see what's happening inside the tab and inside the browser. And so now, we'd like to hear from you. And if we're going to just do a random poll here, would love to know what your biggest security concern is today. Is it lack of visibility? Is it risky extensions, shadow IT, data leakage, or is there some other vulnerability? I think you should have a pop-up where it says polls and quizzes. It's our secure browsing poll. And if you could click on one of those that you find is your biggest concern today, that would be really helpful. And we'll reveal the results here shortly. I'll wait just a minute while you're thinking about it.
Jonathan, it looks like early results of the poll are coming in, and it seems like lack of visibility is number one with 45% of the polling results.
That's interesting. Well, that is what we're seeing in the market as well. So that's pretty consistent. And so it's really more, though, than safe browsing. Secure browsing goes far beyond, what most people think is safe surfing. It's not just about blocking malicious websites. There's really quite a lot that's involved here. True secure browsing combines real-time protection with control inside the browser itself. And this means granular visibility, who's doing what, where, what websites are they going to, what applications are they using most frequently, context-aware controls, blocking risky behavior in real time, the ability to block risky or known malicious websites and URLs, those kinds of things that most people are innocently going to, data protection without disrupting users. This is important because we don't want to disrupt, the current, user workflows. There's extension risk management and enforcement. Today, I saw a recent poll. There's about a survey. There's 1 million extensions that have been created for Chrome, Edge, and Safari, and other browsers. And out of those 1 million, there are about 50,000 extensions that are known to be malicious, have a malicious code, ransomware, have permissions that people didn't know exist. And that's becoming an increasingly important area and a black hole for security and IT. And that's becoming super important when it comes to browser security. And then finally, SaaS app governance within the browser itself. The ability to go to the applications that you're allowed to go to and blocking the ones that you're not. And so the key advantage with this approach is that we meet users where they are, where they're working, providing security, without risking or sacrificing productivity. So it's not about forcing users to use a new browser, one that they're not familiar with. This is about giving users the flexibility to use the browsers of their choice, the ones that they're used to, and at the same time giving them the protection that they need. And so enterprise browser security is now, it's a top priority. Browser threats are rising. We discussed a little bit about that. And the reality is that organizations are struggling to keep up. Most companies today are doing nothing when it comes to securing browsers. I think there was a Gartner report recently that said, that less than 10% of organizations are configuring browsers correctly, managing browsers in a proactive manner. And this is even worse, for remote and hybrid workers. And I think, and just looking at some of the statistics, 94% of knowledge workers spend at least half of their productive time in a browser. 65% of end users admit to falling victim to a web-based threat in the past year. I mean, that's just the number of people that admit it. You can imagine that there's quite a lot more that don't admit it because they're embarrassed about it. I think all of us have been there where we click on something that we're not supposed to, and we go somewhere where it's not a place that we should be browsing. 80% of users are interrupted by security alerts, weekly driving around workloads. 90% of users have bypassed security controls to get their work done. This primarily refers to things like VPNs and remote browser isolation. These solutions have been in the market a long time, but the reality is that there's a lot of ways that workers are getting around them to get their work done. They're feeling bogged down by them. They're not really elegant, next-gen solutions like the kinds that we're offering. And then finally, 88% of organizations plan to invest in browser security controls in the next year. That's what our survey has demonstrated. And this is a survey, by the way, we're going to make available to everybody in this webinar. It was commissioned by us through the Enterprise Strategy Group, ESG, one of the leading research and analyst firms. And there's quite a lot of good data points in there that I would encourage you to review at your leisure. And we'll send those to you once this webinar is completed. And so let's talk about the playbook for modern browser security. This is based on the research that we commissioned, based on meetings now with almost 500 security and IT professionals as to what they're doing and what the best practices are. First of all, it's around visibility. Everywhere users work. I think that was the #1 survey concern. It's really around turning the lights on in the dark room to basically reveal exactly what your workers are doing in their browsers that you never had visibility over before. That's the key thing. That will level set, the understanding of what you need to do. Second, it's around managing and controlling extensions proactively. If you think of the web browser as the new operating system, then you can think of extensions as the new applications. Virtually every single SaaS app today, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, Workday, Office 365, the Google Workspace, all of the leading software applications have a companion extension. And those extensions are software applications that are running in your browsers. And in many cases, they are doing things and having access to data that you would not want them to. And we're exposing that and giving you the ability to control exactly what they have the ability to do, and in many cases, restricting that ability. It's around governing SaaS usage and shadow IT, from within the browser. Again, all the other tools in the market, whether they are CASB solutions, SASE solutions, VPNs, DNS filters, content filtering, all of these things do not see what's happening within the browser. So the solution that are in the market today that gives this ability is really the best practice. Applying real-time data protection policies, copy, paste, downloads, uploads. A lot of the things that the VDI service providers and software companies have been able to do historically, from PII data masking and blocking the ability for users to see personal information, we can now do within the browser itself. And that is a relatively new development, and many companies are seeing that as super important in terms of giving them the protection they need specifically when it comes to third-party workers, remote agents, and those kinds of workers that should not have access to this kind of information. And then finally, it's around delivering a frictionless security that users don't hate. I mean, the reality is that, we've used Chrome, Edge, and Safari and other browsers for 20 years now. Most of us have become very accustomed to these browsers, and the last thing the users want is a new, unproven browser that they just can't find their way around. And even though they may be based on a fork of Chromium and a somewhat similar look and feel, the reality is that they're not the kind of browsers that you're used to. And so from our research, from our conversations, the last thing that IT and security professionals want is to impose a new browser on their workers that's just going to create more friction, more change management, and more hate, directed at them. It's really around making workers happy and giving them the flexibility to use what they're accustomed to, and also providing the protection at the same time. That's really the winning story. And so the future is not a new browser, it's securing the one browsers that users already love. And so with that, we're offering an exclusive offer with Farouk and ACM. It's available to all new and existing clients and partners. And it's basically a way for you to lock in ACM, for 12 months and upgrade to ACM Premium at no additional charge. And all you have to do is scan this QR code to book a meeting, and we'll be happy to review that offer for you. And we'll be able to get you in this solution very quickly. One of the really great things about this solution is the time to value, how quickly it can be implemented, and having a professional firm to help with that implementation, like Farouk, is really what it's all about, and why we're here, and why we really appreciate this opportunity, Todd. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you to share a little bit more about Farouk and all the great things that you're doing to help your customers protect and secure their browsers.
Yep. Well, like I said, we are the masters of end user infrastructure. So if that means that it's a desktop, if that means that it's a SaaS application that we try to deliver to the users, we try to do it. We try to do it as the most secure and most efficient way as possible. And what is different between us and other other services providers out there is that we build every one of our offering. We build a tried and true methodology. And a lot of us at this organization came from the pedigree of Citrix Consulting Services. So we are very much the believer of a proven methodology. And so before we actually make this offer to the masses, we went through the drawing boards to make sure that we actually create a tried and true methodology from design to deploy to support, so that we are ready to actually bring the solution to our clients with a proven methodology that is fail safe, and we're able to not just help you design it, we can help you implement it, and we can help you actually manage it in the long run. So that is really what makes us different, right? As much as I'm interested in helping you selling the products, I'm more interested to have a long term, to see the long term success of our clients, and I believe that this is the right solution to our clients, like Jonathan, like you said, a non-intrusive way to secure every type of browser versus just telling them that you have to actually deploy a net new new browser or another tool or another platform. I think this is a much elegant way of going about it, and also much more flexible, and achieves and I think that it achieves more than the traditional way that we think about how to actually secure a working environment. So yeah, so that's really what I think that makes us different, and why us, right? Um, and I think that a lot of the body of our work speaks for itself, and a lot of the clients, they understand, the ones that we work with, they understand what our value is, and I hope that everyone who attended the webinar, and and also the ones that are going to actually um, listen to this webinar afterwards can understand that, and we really look forward to help you address this, this I won't say problem, but this phenomenon of browser and the browser security, in the right way. So that's how I'm gonna leave it. And again, I think that we should all try it. Get uh, get get yourself the free trial from ACM, and you'll see for yourself, like, how much control that you could actually get out of it, and how little interference that you have with your end users. It's really the difference maker. I think that fact that they're it's seamless to them, and you're gonna be able to actually get a lot out of the peace of mind out of it. Again, go back to the survey that we have, right? Most people are concerned about not lack of visibility, right? So fact that we can just address that with the solution, it takes away a lot of that doubt, and it's and I think that is what makes this solution really unique.
Wonderful.
All
Great
right.
presentation, Todd and Jonathan. I'm now going to suggest that anybody that has questions, feel free to ask your question in the Q&A button down below, and we'll field some questions. And one of the things I'm seeing one initially come in here, Jonathan. One initial question is, why aren't traditional tools like VPNs and firewalls and CASB, et cetera, why are they not enough anymore?
Right. So we touched on that, and it really comes down to the fact that almost all the tools that we think about in terms of protecting users, whether they are email tools, VPNs, remote browser isolation, CASB solutions, SASE solutions, all of these different solutions in the market, for the most part, were created and developed prior, to the day when most workers, worked outside the four walls of an office. Most of these tools were developed when people came into an office, and there was always a few people outside the office, but for the most part, everybody was in the office. And so they took a fundamentally different approach. But the reality today is that most companies, certainly bigger companies, have distributed workforces, have offshore development teams, have nearshore customer support teams, have remote sales teams, have managed devices, unmanaged devices, have just this incredibly diverse environment, of workers, devices, and functional areas. But the one thing they have in common is the browser. And the fact is that all of these workers that I mentioned work most of their day in a browser. Some 70 to 80% of their time. We all know that are participating in this webinar. And so that's really where it starts. And that's why a solution like ACM is so important in terms of providing that protection, when we're the only a type of protection that sees within the browser, what's happening in the browser and within the tab of the browser. And so that fundamentally is the reason that we're able to do it. And then the other thing is that these other solutions that I mentioned were focused on devices, networks, data centers, but not the browser itself, which is the new operating system.
Yeah, I think also that there's, the traditional solutions like CS, VPNs and secure gateways and whatnot. There's I call it there's always it's an age-long scenarios of if-then statement. Coming from my background as a computer science person, that it's almost like a code of if you're X, then you do Y, right? It's a lot of if-then statements, right? That if you're in scenario A, then you get access using B, and if you're in scenario C, you have to use scenario D. It's not very seamless to that end user, and then they ended up either finding a workaround or they hate it, right? I'll use an example. One of my beloved big software vendor company, that they decided that they want to cut off access to Salesforce, only allow them to be able to use it from the corporate network, right? So they did that, but then the people that are actually using it are the one, that uses Salesforce, are the sales people that are always on the road. They're always outside the organization, and then they quickly figured out that other than logging into the virtual desktops and use Salesforce that way, they realized that they will find a workaround, that if they download the Salesforce app on their mobile phone, it had a direct workaround for not have to bypass the network restrictions. So it's things like that, right? And then that's what I think that's what Jonathan has mentioned many times about that shadow IT scenario, where that people, if they're not comfortable, they feel restricted, they don't feel like they're getting the convenience of using and accessing their information, they're going to find workarounds. So I think this is HCM's solution being natively on the browser that they have, and be seamless to them. That if it's a much more elegant way to solve that problem.
That's great. So just as a reminder, we are accepting questions in the Q&A button below. One of the other questions that came in, and I think it's a clarifying question, Jonathan, is this deployed as a browser extension?
Yes, yeah, this is a browser extension, and for that reason, it's really easy to deploy. There's a number of different deployment methods. It can be deployed by IT. It can be deployed through Microsoft Intune, through Google Chrome Manager, through any kind of software third party that IT or security uses on a day-to-day basis to install different software on users' desktops. So we really, again, built this from the ground up to meet customers where they are and to use the existing tools that they have to install the extension. We also have an optional sensor that has some additional capabilities, and that's something that we can we'll talk with customers about to see if they are interested in that or want that. But it is installed as an extension.
Okay. Great response. Our next question coming in from the audience is, were privacy concerns of the employee taken into consideration, and is it understood that any property of the company is generally monitored, or have employees express concerns about privacy.
Right. So the way that we address privacy is as follows. The solution is designed to work with different browser profiles. So if you, it's quite normal that everybody has, their own computer. They may have their own email account, their own, personal, reasons for using it, and then they have their corporate profiles. So the solution is designed to work just on the corporate profiles and not on personal profiles, and therefore protecting privacy of users. And I think that's a concern that we heard early on. And that's why we built it to just work on their professional corporate profiles. And I think there is a pretty reasonable expectation, that people, workers have, employees have, that if they're on a corporate profile, then anything that they do, potentially is going to be, protected and secured by the company. And we see that with remote monitoring and management, with managed devices, and those are pretty typical tools and platforms that we integrate with in the market.
Outstanding. I guess also specific to the user, there's another question. Does the solution impact user experience at all?
Not at all. The extension works in the background. It works invisibly, and there's really no reason that workers will even notice that their user experience is any different. This is not like remote browser isolation, where you're basically remoting, a pixel remoting, from a data center, from a virtual server in a data center. It's not like, VDI, where you're accessing, your infrastructure in a data center. You're basically surfing the web as you normally would through your local browser, and the solution works in the background completely invisibly to users.
Outstanding. And another question, AI enabled attacks are becoming more prevalent. How does ACM stay ahead of the AI use in cyber attacks?
Yeah, we like to say that we're an AI company that has a browser protection solution. We have, one of the benefits of coming to this party a little bit later than everybody else is that we were able to take advantage of a lot of the tools, that have been developed over the last year or two, and made available to software developers and companies like ACM that are on the cutting edge. And so all of the protections that we've built into our solution are based on AI models that we've been able to build based on some of the large language models, and in terms of understanding what's a risky website versus a benign website, extensions that are safe versus ones that are not. We've been able to build those through AI and machine learning models that give us, we think, a real competitive moat when it comes to protecting our customers.
Outstanding. And then one final question before we close off for the day. The question is, from initial implementation to full integration, what's the average turnaround time for an ACM deployment?
This is it's quick. I mean, in terms of deployment, we can deploy literally thousands of users, within 10 minutes. This is unlike, VDI. It's unlike DAS, remote browser isolation. It's unlike basically forcing workers to use a new browser, where there's going to be a lot of disruption to workflows, a lot of change management. I mean, if you think about our solution, the only people that interact with our software will be the IT department, someone in IT, the administrator, our partner, like Farouk. If they're managing your environment, obviously they'll have access to our administrative console. But workers themselves, they have no interaction with the software. So therefore, it's a pretty quick deployment, in comparison to other tools in the market. I mean, this is something that could be deployed, within a week to thousands of users if that was required or wanted.
Outstanding. Great questions and very engaging responses. Any final thoughts, Jonathan or Todd, that you'd like to share before we close out today?
I'll defer to Todd.
No, I think that I think seeing is believing. I strongly suggest that you take the opportunity to, to give a solution a try, and then a lot of these questions will kind of answer itself. And like I said, it's fairly, it's really non-intrusive, so you could pretty much deploy it and you can take it away if you don't find fit. And strongly suggest that you give it a try and see what benefits you.
Yeah,
Outstanding.
just to add on to that, thank you, Todd. I think, yeah, seeing is believing. Follow up if you're the least bit curious. We'd love to engage with you and show you our software, and on a no obligation basis. And I think you'll like what you see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Todd and Farouk again. We're really excited about this partnership, and really appreciate the opportunity to present to you all today. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank the audience. Thank you all for joining today. Appreciate you listening in, and please do reach out to Farouk or ACM if you have additional questions. We'll be following up shortly with additional materials, including that ESG report. Thank you again, and have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.